Sonic Manga Issue 3. After the creative wasteland that was the previous issue, I'm guessing this is going to be just the Sonic 1 final boss fight, and that's it, right? I was excited to read a Sonic manga because it's another continuity instead of the games, so it could be anything. But no, it doesn't have to be tied down to one particular continuity that's not canon to. And because they want to pad out the overly uncreative derivative and basic plot because it's too basic, they start out by wasting our time with Eggman whining like a baby. We never need to see this. It's not funny, and we already know Sonic's good at fighting him. Why does the tied-up bird guy call Eggman a coward? Not to mention it makes no sense that he'd be stupid enough to directly insult him to his face. Logically, Eggman would punch him for that, or immediately turn him to a badnik. He says that Sonic will be coming to rescue the people in front of him. But a competent villain wouldn't just let the insult go unpunished. It's like Sega Japan has no respect for Eggman at all. Every time there's a villain scene where the villains do nothing but remind us they're ineffectively planning against the heroes. It's like the easiest and most bare bones form of padding. After the title panel is again in the wrong place, and we're reminded that this is just an unprofessional fan translation because of the F-bombs, though it would make logical sense that Eggman would have his badnik swear at Sonic if he is an adult. Sonic easily destroys him in one hit with a spin attack. Again. While swearing. So, they do this, but they don't say Porker and Johnny instead of Pocky and Picky. Thank goodness we see a place called Clockwork Zone, where Sonic has some giant great gears behind him, though they look more like a clock if they were brown. He goes to a dead end in a passageway and falls through a trap door, realistically holding his head in pain afterwards. It was pretty boring up to this point. I hate how one of his eyes looks here. Would it kill them to just have his eyelid be closed properly? This isn't even sad AM. Then out of nowhere, some water splashes at him from behind and sends him into Labyrinth Zone, which I thought was before Starlight Zone. So they're shaking things up by varying the level order. It's a pointless change, but at least they were trying. But I'm just angry that Sonic spent almost no time in this Clockwork Zone whatsoever, and basically nothing happened in it. Then why bother putting it in the story? Oh, for boring padding for an overly basic plot. Maybe they should have just tried something original then, instead of ripping off the story of a game that barely had a story. We could have had him go through a level in a giant cuckoo clock. Instead, we see Sonic go down the slide in Labyrinth Zone again and fall into the water when he already did that in the game. And the choppers underwater somehow talk to him without gargling. It makes sense if we saw a thought bubble instead. That would imply they're speaking to him in a different way, like through speakers that work underwater. At least the Sonic X comic had more characters than just Sonic repeating Sonic 1 for once, so their unique character interaction made things more interesting. There was an actual point. Sonic reveals that apparently he can't do a rolling attack underwater. At least that's original. It's another one of the manga's totally forgettable bits of originality that's so forgettable it doesn't make up for shit. He can move at the speed of sound. Water wouldn't slow him down that much. I guess it does make sense that since he's so new at being a hero, he wouldn't have started calling the spin attack regularly yet. So, did he actually swim to get to the surface? Probably not. It's hard to tell because it's a comic book. And for some reason, the fishbot just stays still, saying that he was lucky, rather than continuing to go after him mindlessly as Sonic stays there in the water. And again, what's the point of Eggman programming badniks to be so smart that they can talk? That would be extra effort on his part that he wouldn't need. At least Sonic looks sympathetic because he's scared of them. See, I'm saying everything good that I can too. I'm trying to give credit where credit is due, but it's hard to find in a sea of boredom. I've seen all this already. Eggman speaks to Sonic through a loudspeaker and shows him some kidnapped people tied to the bottom of his Eggmobile. I'm so baffled that he didn't put them into badniks already. He doesn't know badniks are useless to him or he wouldn't be making them, so why didn't he put them to use? They would have worked as bait anyways. It would make more sense if he did what he did in Sonic the Comic, where he put Johnny and Amy into Cyberniks and had them fight Sonic. He could have done that here and told Sonic that the people were trapped inside the Cyberniks. Then we could have an action scene with them. Apparently, Sonic recognizes these people enough to call them by name. Where did Sonic make all these personal friends I don't care about? People complain about quote-unquote Sonic's shitty friends nowadays, But that actually does apply here because these characters do literally nothing. At least Sonic's shitty friends in the modern era tend to have special powers and do stuff in the plot. Eggman says they're gonna have a painful experience in his place if he insists on opposing him. That's competent and menacing of him as a villain. But then he looks stupid by telling Sonic to just stand still and let him finish him off. It would have been smarter if he just pressed the kill Sonic button while he was busy saying all of that, and caught Sonic off guard when he was patiently standing there listening to all of his speech. Logically, Sonic would be too impatient to listen to Eggman if he doesn't have to, and just attack, because he's clearly a generically evil bad guy who never has anything interesting to say but bragging. But I guess he can't because Eggman's got people in the claw of his Eggmobile right now. And the crane of it starts to crush them. But unlike Rick and Morty, where I know anything can happen, this is Sonic, so I know that the comic would be too gutless to even tell us they got broken ribs out of this, let alone kill them off. Bullshit! How did Sonic free them so easily? Okay, the spin dash can move at Sonic force, that would break anything, but then we should have been shown that. By cutting past him earning his victory, it just spits in the face of Eggman being a menacing badass by having Sonic immediately gloat out winning too easily. I expect Eggman to make his crane out of much tougher materials than that by this point. He has to know Sonic's able to smash all of his robots, and he had time to prepare, didn't he? I just wish more could have happened than this. It's not like Eggman's done a whole bunch of evil, menacing things up to this point that would make us happy and grateful for any victory Sonic had, like the manga seems to expect of us. It's not like he roboticized Sonic's friends or something. Sonic gets himself all the way up to the Eggmobile and creatively calls his homing attack Rolling Attack Rapid Strikes. You know, instead of having English because you did a literal translation, you could have just called it the homing attack. In a pleasant surprise, this time the explosion at the side of the Eggmobile sends Eggman flying out of it, and we cut away from him as he holds up a white flag I guess Sonic brought him after. I guess Sonic told all those animals to drag Eggman's big body all the way to this nature area because he's not lying down in Labyrinth Zone where he just was. And if this was literally where he landed, well, I think Green Hill Zone is pretty far away from Labyrinth Zone, he would have died from that landing. Well, I'm glad they tried an original boss fight idea instead of just mimicking what happened in the game. But, well, one, that's not a boss fight because he didn't even do anything against Sonic. That's even worse than the spike. I was excited to see the original ideas that Sega Japan would have for Sonic in this manga. The things that they would do that's different, like their equivalent of the Saturn Freedom Fighters and roboticization. And all I'm being told so far is that they're completely empty of ideas past classic Sonic game stuff. We haven't been reminded of Sonic's Rock Band, so I feel like it's been retconned away or forgotten because I don't trust this comic. Eggman says he gives in as a text box says that peace will return to South Island, and people cheer for Sonic. I guess Eggman is just saying this to humor him. Realistically, he wouldn't give up. When I was told that this was one continuity where Eggman was defeated for good, I assumed this meant he was killed. But no, he wasn't defeated for good then. He wasn't killed or sent to an alternate dimension or anything. We just didn't see more issues of this manga because it was fucking boring. Nobody cared about it enough because, one, it was literally just an advertisement for a video game, with the originality being so forgettable and minor that you forgot all of it immediately. And because it's so rare and minor, it, if anything, might cause cynical people to think that they just didn't do the research on the game, because like, oh, they got the level order wrong. And two, the Japanese don't care about Sonic, so no wonder they didn't make more issues. Why do you think it took so long for an anime of Sonic to come out? Why do you think Japan never had Season 3 of Sonic X? Whenever the Japanese think of Sega, they usually just think of stuff like Yakuza or simulators of teenage boys going to high school and dating girls. Anything but Sonic, because Sonic is supposed to be marketed to the West, and that's why it was so successful. With Sonic's edgy attitude and everything, it appealed to a huge, wide international audience, instead of a tiny country of people that don't care about it, so naturally it got more sales that way. So if this is the only Sonic manga there is, I can see why, because they apparently exhausted all of their ideas. When I was expecting something really original, I got Sonic 1 again. There's no excuse for this. This is literally just Sonic goes through a couple zones in Sonic 1, barely being any badniks, and effortlessly defeats Eggman in seconds after he threatens people. A plot that basic and bare is just disappointingly boring and uninspired. I could write a game adaptation like this too. It's not like it was terrible to read. Basically nothing about the plot of this manga was contrived. And I only hated any of the characters when Sonic wasn't bothering to arrest Eggman, like in the ending here, where the story just ends without me seeing Eggman get tied up and put in prison. And I can't trust that Sonic did that when he didn't do it the other time. But other than that recurring idiot ball, the manga was surprisingly logical in writing and didn't make me hate anybody, so I've read much worse than this. But being bland and boring isn't how you impress me, just because it could be worse. I'd rather read a story that's confusing at points, but makes up for it by being interesting, keeping me on the edge of my seat. It was alright, but that's just it. Alright. Because the only parts where I got excited were the originality parts that barely impressed me. Otherwise, it was just a boring Sonic 1 retread. I hated that Clockwork Zone had almost no focus at all when I think it was supposed to be Scrap Brain Zone anyways. So why ignore the final level? If it's Scrap Brain Zone again, what is the point of giving it a new name? Well, what is more infamous in the fanbase, Labyrinth Zone or Scrap Brain Zone? Maybe they're both equal, and so it makes sense. But still, you'd think that Scrap Brain Zone will get more focus than Spring Art Zone. Like, its iconic things are the slow-moving blocks, which are in Casino Night Zone 2, and the bumpers, which are everywhere. What I really want is to review the manga where Amy Rose and Charmy B came from. If it's in English or French, of course. That was the manga I was always looking forward to, not this redundant advertisement. I guarantee you that if Sadie M or Archie was as samey and redundant as this, they wouldn't have anywhere near the long-lasting success, because they wouldn't be memorable. The reboot was like the games too, and it failed financially. I wonder why. You know what would have made this little story arc more interesting? Recolor all the levels to look more unique. Give them unique names. Completely change the order of the levels in the story. And rearrange where the various traps and set pieces of the levels are at random. Like putting the lava chase scene in Spring Art Zone. Then it would feel like Sonic's going through a kind of new adventure. Going through places we never saw before. It didn't take much effort to do this. Part of creativity is rearranging old ideas and mashing them together to make something new. Like, scientists even did brain scans of people trying to come up with new ideas, and that's literally what they found. Like, the memory centers of their brains activated. You can use a pre-existing game as a basic foundation. And people might still recognize that there's all Sonic 1 traps and set pieces, but it'd at least be worth it to read if they actually tried to be original. Instead, oh no, they couldn't do that because then it wouldn't be Sonic 1. Good! Why did they think they needed to make an adaptation of Sonic 1? They didn't! Who was asking for this? Sonic 1 would have sold anyways. What were they, insecure? Anybody in the fanbase could write a game adaptation by just playing a game and writing fanfiction about its plot. Fanfiction writers could do this, so it only impresses me when they do something creative. Because that takes actual effort to think up. Doing actual writing instead of borrowing somebody else's. And the more creative a story is, the better. So why'd they think they needed to hamper all of the manga writer's potential with a straight Sonic 1 adaptation? This manga could have so easily not been that. He completely abandoned the plot thread where Eggman was trying to dig up all the Chaos Emeralds because we never see the rest of them. Well, this is supposed to be a comic book, and he wouldn't forget about that. I just realized that. That's a baffling omission. I bet even Sonic's Legacy continued on with this plot thread and had all of the emeralds get bound. Sure, the emeralds made no contribution to Sonic 1's plot, but they were still there. And this isn't Sonic 1. It's not the same exact story as it, so at that point, why waste the potential of these unlimitedly powerful jewels? Them powering all sorts of different machines could have made the plot more creative and exciting. We could have actually seen Eggman make the world's biggest boiled egg at least. They could have been powering a doomsday device to make the plot more threatening. I just don't see the point of any game adaptation in general, let alone it being too faithful, because by the very nature of adaptations, it's not going to keep everything the same anyways, or there'd be no point at all in reading it. So a few things are gonna get changed to be more creative. So what's the point of being too samey anyways when it misses the whole appeal of a new interpretation of the story you're looking forward to? It's an adaptation. It's adapting it to something. Not literally the same story, or else there'd be no dialogue at all. Sonic 1 is not such a complicated plot that it needs supplementary story material to clarify things. It's not a 3D Sonic game like Sonic Forces. Sonic goes through areas full of traps with no one to talk to but himself, and effortlessly beats every robot in his way in one hit. He runs and spin attacks through places. The end. That's not enough to base a comic book around. I hope that there's a lot more Sonic manga out there than this, because I want to review all of them, but if that's the case, then I bet this is the absolute bottom of the barrel. At least in terms of creativity. Because I would take something that's much more creative than this, even if the writing was more baffling.